Thank you all. Good afternoon. I'm Antigoni, and I would also like to thank you, Pilar, and everyone else for this opportunity to present my work with you today. If could move on to the next one. Thank you. So starting with an overview of this presentation, I will examine the translator and their role as the attempt to mediate between stories and cultures in the context of children's literature. However, in this case, we will be looking at texts not only intended for children, but rather created by them. With this in mind and insights from both literary and translation studies, we'll examine what challenges child authorship may pose and how this may influence the translator's role and choices. Can I have the next one, please? Thank you. So attempting first to define children's literature, scholars agree that the notion requires still a lot of research to be conducted as they embark from different points of view concerning its definition and scope. One of the most significant factors is the age of the audience, which ranges from under 3 years old up to 18. Dividing age into groups allows us to better cater for the qualitative and quantitative difference between various levels of processing of speech and therefore of linguistic content of certain literary works. So in other words, the older the children, the more complex the books might become. The relationship between age and complexity is depicted by other researchers as well, as they argue that children's literature is more paradoxically a complex literature in the context of its essential simplicity. And that leads us to the notion of simplicity and what Nikolajeva described as some common prejudice about children's literature. Namely that is simply action-oriented rather than character-oriented, optimistic and with happy endings, didactic and repetitive, both at the narrative and discourse levels. Could I have the next one, please? Thank you. Referring to simplicity, she asserts that it arises from the asymmetrical nature of the communication between the reader and the writer. So young readers' cognitive capacity, life experience, and linguistic skills are normally different from those of an adult writer. What it means is that children's literature should appeal to the imagination of the reader. It needs to respond to children's feelings, even if it might be also read by adults. The text is conditioned by what a reader already knows, in other words, familiar topics, uncomplicated characters, a straightforward storyline. Also that the language of children's literature is assumed to be a scaled down version of language in general, so simplified to be made accessible to these young readers. The next one, please. Thank you. So after discussing how the age of the target readership is a determining factor that causes asymmetry and dictates simplicity in children's literature, we move on to discuss what does this imply for the translating process of children's books. With regards to the overall aim of translating these books, we could say that it is to enhance international understanding of every child and approximate them to the foreign culture. So the aim does not fall far from the aim of translating any other literary notion. Regarding the norms that govern the translation of children's literature, we could mention norms relating to the original text, so faithfulness of the translation to the source text and author, literary norms, business norms, which is complying with the requirements of editors and publishers, as well as specifically didactic norms, pedagogical norms, so the text is to correspond to level of language proficiency of the child, and technical norms, so translation is to correspond to the original's layout, for example, in the case of picture books. Thank you. As for translation strategies, when translating children's literature, several of them can be also applied to the translation of adults' literature to various degrees. So, depending on different categorizations by translation scholars, translators may choose between direct and free translation, foreignization and domestication, or simplification. So, the tendency to simplify the language used in translation, explicitation, to spell things out rather than leave them implicit, and normalization, to conform to patterns and practices which are typical of the target language. Moreover, scholars to see repeated words and clusters as a universal feature of translated language, and therefore avoiding repetition is seen as a common translation strategy. Thank you. Now, moving on specifically to the translations of some very particular children's books, there is the bilingual pictures books of Bücherpiraten. Why these in particular? Because in a single phrase, they're all created by children. And I'll start with a few more words about the ongoing project. Bücherpiraten, or Book Pirates in English, is a children's literature house located in Lübeck, in Germany. It's a non-profit association founded over 20 years ago, which offers a wide range of programs and events for children and teenagers. With their motto, "But for every child," they support reading and they promote the notion of stories in whatever shape or form, may that be reading, writing, composing, acting, filming, listening, etc. To support children whose mother tongue is not German, the Bücherpiraten Project 1001 Sprache, so languages, offers numerous free bilingual picture books on their website, translated in a variety of languages by a network of volunteers. The project has also been honored by several awards, as you can see. Could I have the next one, please? Thank you. The picture books are created in picture book workshops. Discussing the developing process of one recent picture book, Martin Hayes, the conductor of the workshop, and Christina Sturm, the project coordinator of the bilingual picture books, explained that it was carried out in the House of Book Pirates over a period of a week with a group of children between 7 and 12 years old. Taking us through the details of the workshop and the moderation of the progress, Chris talks about how children start by looking at picture books, the creative ways of brainstorming ideas, the value of everyone's thoughts, and the selection process by voting for their favorites. He talks about their imaginative suggestions and how these turn into words, sentences, and pages, as well as their creative ways of illustrating the characters, alongside the help of a professional illustrator. At the end of that week, the images were digitized and the children presented the story in front of their families and friends. And what followed this creative process was its publication in the Book Pirates website and the translation of the picture book in as many languages as possible. These are some examples of the picture books that you can find on their website. So can I have the next one, please? Thank you. So why the Bücherpiraten, and why is this asymmetrical relationship different to other ones within the children's literature? From the perspective of creation, the picture books display all the main features of a typical bilingual picture book. The children usually depict talking animals as protagonists, or even heroes with imaginary names, sounds, features, and abilities. The stories, they take place in real or imaginary places. There is an explicitly stated central question or a big wish, whereas the problems encountered, solutions, moral message at the end revolve around age-appropriate topics, such as friendship or planet and environmental issues, peace, or other ethical issues, as well as their personal experiences, feelings, dreams, hopes, and fears, their identities, and the notion of others. The messages conveyed in these books resonate with the young reader's emotional but also cognitive abilities. Henceforth, they're written in a simple language without complex phrases and structures, but with plenty of repetitions and clusters. Could I have the last one, please? Thank you. It is, however, from the perspective of translation that the asymmetrical nature of these particular books becomes even more evident and intrinsically challenging. This is not reflected in the translating process of specific characteristics such as names and rhymes or sounds, but it is rather reflected in the place of the translator within a creative writing project as this one, in which, as the project moderator explained, you only aim to give space to the creative ideas of the children and to not interfere. So, viewing the translator not only as a mediator between systems of language and culture, but also as a second writer or a co-author. In the case of adult authorship, implies that the writer is to go back in time and remember themselves as a child so that they would be understandable for their audience, and bear in mind that they're a kind of mediator between the child and the outer world. Other critics stress out the sociopolitical background and the ideological agenda that the adult authorship may bear in the construction of the literary text, differentiating between the innocence of children's books and the innocence of childhood. Some may even take it to an extreme and argue that children's literature exists as an idea in the adult's mind about the ways one speaks to children, about how we adults configure childhood. It is a way for adults, in short, to distinguish children from adults. Moreover, the commercialization of children's books by the publishers has also been depicted as a factor that can negatively impact authors' choices. However, when commercialization is replaced by charity status and the adult author is replaced by children authors, then the aforementioned challenges and effects are automatically removed from this equation, and the adult translator find themselves essentially in a child's world, in the middle of an otherwise harmonic and balanced relationship between children as authors and children as readers. It is precisely the consequences of this position and intricate balance that increase immensely the responsibility of the translator to negotiate between languages, cultures, but also unlimited levels of imagination and children's creativity, as well as to respect and honor both the readership and their authorship, especially if one considers the view that children have a marvelous ability to re-experience the most alien and distant things and circumstances if a good translator is there to help them. And as Lincoln argues, I believe that their imagination continues to build where the translator can go no further. So thank you very much. That will be all. Yes, the references at the end. Yeah.